Good morning, John. Thanks for this spontaneous acceptance of making this a recorded webinar rather than a private conversation. And introductions wise, I'll introduce myself then. Annabelle, I think will be okay because we missed first time round intro from Annabelle. But I'm 56 years old, met Annabelle when I was working back in EY in 1999. And my thing, what gets me out of bed, is organisations and bureaucracies are not really good at solving people and planet problems. We do lots to make money, but people, communities, the environment, the biosphere, not very good. And although I'm originally a geek, most of my work is about talking to people at the moment. And so that's probably enough of an introduction to get away. So over to Annabelle.
But my thing, as Rob said, we've sort of been working together on this journey, which is an experiment really into the future of work. And my thing has always been about people and putting them more central to sort of understanding what they are, what they can, and what they want to do, and how that then emerges in their relationship with their work. You know, what value they want to bring to the world through their work, and work being the broadest sense. When Rob talks about he's a father, we would view caring and looking after the kids, and it's a level of work that you need, that's part of your life. So sort of just considering the whole person really in that way, which has meant I'm a massive advocate for what I call real flexibility, which is at least a two-way a thing, because you can't be flexible on your own unless you have agreement from wherever else you're engaging. So and everything that means. Also, enjoyment, fun is my fourth value. Fun at work, enjoyment, really important. And a long time ago, I read your book, and I felt that this brought something to my life. I don't feel I've followed it as a Bible in any way, but just the idea of sharing things to get improvement from others, it really resonated with me. And also sort of the generosity element of it. I feel if you give, then you get, and the world's a better place. So I've been following you for that long, but about at the centre of what we do, we have this thing called value exchange, which is sort of a tool or a means of going on a journey, really with oneself and whatever one's network is around oneself that one wants to engage with from a perspective of work. And about two and a half years ago, we embarked on taking this to younger people. As the pandemic hit in the UK, we'd always wanted to move ourselves, because we started this 24 years ago, and then so about 2-3 years ago we were 20 years into this journey that is this experiment, and we were older, and we'd always felt, if your future of work, you've got to engage the young people, and see whether we could make this work, this model, which had worked well for people who were in quite a privileged situation, could invest the time in doing it. So pandemic hit, 5-6 young people came to work with us, no roles, no salary, no nothing, just the basis that we have this system of work built around this thing called value exchange. Can we work with you? Can you work with us, and see where it takes you? And then the government, through the pandemic, introduced this initiative called Kickstart in the UK, which was basically allowing employers to take on young people between 16 and 24 to have a minimum wage paid by the government, but have 6 months of work experience, whichever employers wanted to take this up. So we doubled the size of our organisation almost overnight, 2-3 months, went from 30 to 60, took on 30 young people on the same basis of there are no roles, this is all about you, and how can we help you get from where you are now to wherever you can get to in 6 months. And it varied quite massively, because some people were ex-offenders, county lines drugs, and then other people were firsts from Russell Group universities, and it was a wonderful and a strenuous journey. And by the end of the Kickstart scheme, we'd worked with about 65 young people, been through our work system, and it just brought this work system, value exchange, the thing that that's sort of kept me here really for the last 24 years. came a bit front and center, and I feel a bit on a mission of world domination at the moment, that this is a better way of working. I haven't invested in a white cat yet, but yeah, I mean, in a nice way. What did it, delightfully disruptive or something politely disrupted was a phrase Rob used a few days ago that I quite liked. A polite disruption rather than world domination. But so that's me, and that's what I'm about.
You mentioned you doubled this effort, so you took on 30 people. So what do the other 30 people do?
Yeah, so we're going to save that one for a tiny bit, John. When we sort of just, who are you? Why do you do what you do? And then we're just going to have some banter, which is random conversation, which normally sparks like fantastic stuff. But we're not going to excuse you from an introduction.
No pressure either.
So, a little bit about me, and it certainly changed over time. So if you asked me this question 2 years ago, or certainly 5 years ago, I'd give you a different answer. Following your lead, I have 5 kids.
Wow.
Between 12 and 27. So I've really seen it's interesting on multiple levels, but to see even the difference between them and what their experiences or expectations are of work and life, and even the planet has changed over those 15 years, that gap. Most of my career, my life, I had a job, and it was, by most accounts, it was a good job. I worked in banking, and where I grew up in the Bronx, if they paid you a certain wage, you really didn't ask any questions. Like, you just did whatever they did. So to land in investment banking, and I was also a computer scientist before the internet, was like a golden ticket of a kind. And I did that unquestioningly. And my career I was doing fine. I was very lucky until I wasn't. And it was only when things changed, financial crisis, organizational changes, etc., that you start to wonder, like, oh, I've just been playing a kind of career roulette my whole life, and I was lucky at times, and now I'm not lucky, and this is a terrible feeling. But it's not just about me; it's about everybody who's kind of waiting for some next shoe to drop, or whether it's a reorg, a budget cut, a layoff, pick a new boss, pick your thing. And that motivated me to do something that I could take more control. And at first I thought that was going to be technology. So I was in a position at the bank, I could bring in a social network back at just like 2009, 2010, it was still early. And I thought, well, these tools really allow you to shape your reputation, have a voice, and connect with people like you so that you could access opportunities without waiting for your boss to do something on your behalf. And the tools were important, they just weren't enough, as now is obvious. Most people were busy, they didn't really see what the benefit might be for them. And they were also afraid, like, what if I do something wrong? I get in trouble. What if my boss doesn't like it? And so that led me to shift from being kind of technology-centric to people-centric, developing ways that people could make contributions, could offer more of themselves at work, could find other people like them that could either help them or that they could cooperate and learn from, but do it in a self-directed way, in a sparking self-determination. And when I did that, for some people at least, it made a big difference. It just gave them this sense of empowerment, of intrinsic motivation. And it's a beautiful thing to see when kind of the pilot light goes on in somebody. Some people went on to do great things. Some people just felt more whole, more comfortable at work, more confident. And in 2016, my time at that bank ended unceremoniously, and I decided to try to make that into a business. And so my initial motivation was, hey, how could I help myself and other people in this bank to have a better experience, like to make more of themselves and do it in a way that felt good. That felt good, but that also led to better work. Like it was also better for the company. But once you turn it into a business, and I think, Annabelle, this might have prompted one of your original questions or outreach, was, well, that's nice, but who's it for? And is it just a nice idea and that some people will like, or is it something that has a value in a marketplace and that some people are willing to pay for, so that it's sustainable? It's an exchange. It's not just something else. It's not just charity. Not that charity is bad, but I wasn't in a position to just be charitable. And so that was the last 7 years, trying to really figure that out. I've since made more things, and I almost literally stumbled into working with companies that I never imagined I would work with. And so, later in the conversation, we talk about, well, what did that look like? And what's a business model? And, do you even need one? Or why is that important? But now what I do is kind of back to my original motivation. I feel that what I have to offer is particularly suitable and valuable inside the workplace. Like that's where it's needed most. That's where I can reach the most people. Although the world's a big place and the internet's a big place, it's inside companies that I actually have more success and more access and can make a bigger difference. And so that's what I do now is I make this range of peer-to-peer learning and development methods and infect companies with them. Not so much to be counter-cultural or corporate rebel, but really to help people wherever they are, whatever job, whatever company, to help them have a better experience, build skills, confidence, networks in ways that are good for them and also good for the company.
So you've just given us enough content there to maybe spark about 3 days of conversation.
I love the bit about where you started, because Rob and I started in 1999.
I was going to go there. Yeah.
But you can imagine the technology that we had, and we started by trying to sell communities of interest into one of the big four that we happened to work for at the time, EY. And in hindsight, I'm like, what? We did. But in hindsight, I'm like, we were absolutely mental. But we tried. We did do that.
But also, I thought, Annabelle, in the year 2000, we came across to the US to meet some of the founding fathers. It was all male, of the internet as it was emerging then in the year 2000, and looked at a lot of the cultural underpinnings of techno optimists who could have said the same things as you've said in terms of this individual agency, connecting, delivering value, and met with some people. One was Etienne Wenger, who was Communities of Practice.
He's right. He was what?
And then we came across for him because he wrote a really interesting book that popularized the term Communities of Practice, which studied insurance claims processors who, big corporate, how do people make sense of the world when their job is being a very mechanistic, claims processor, in the financial services. Some other people like Cliff Figelo of The Well, Howard Rheingold of the online communities kind of. But so then wind forward, and I'm just going to quickly answer your question that I avoided, which is what do those people do?
What do we do?
So in Ethos 12 years ago, we decided not to work for organisations, but to work for ourselves, to be an incubator or accelerator of socially valuable things.
Right.
So they could be non-profits, charities, for-profit, technology. So we've spent the last decade and a bit building stuff for our own benefit, like being a sort of social venture capitalist. And the Young Leaders Project that Annabelle, and we've done some quite big stuff, but they've all been about people and planet. But certainly my geeky mission has been that interplay, not just within organizational culture, but between organizations and between individuals and organizations. So the interplay between me as a person and I happen to work for an organization, or I work for one organization and want to talk to another. And of course, in the middle of our global macroeconomic system, we have, if it hasn't got a price, it's got no value. And when we go from our corporate firewall in finance or anywhere else, we're mediated by, this contract of exchange rather than the concept, like, let's say, of communities of practice. So we value exchange, and our system theory, if you like, is about how do you have conversations with one another? How do you communicate? And we see a movement developing, which you might call working out loud. So my next question might be, where did the working out loud come from as a concept, more than your backstory? Why working out loud? Where did that come from?
So as a phrase, it had been used by a number of people, and had really come to mean making your work visible in different ways. Like that was what it meant. And what I decided to do was, I felt that wasn't enough. Like this idea of making your work visible actually appealed to a small set of people.
Those that would dare do it, yeah.
Right. So,
yeah.
So we all the same people kind of met at the same conferences to talk about how this was a good thing to do, and I wanted to reach more people than that, so what I did was I took that phrase, but I kind of humanized it and tried to build in, well, why would you? And so I expanded it just to mean more than knowledge sharing, but this idea that I have a voice, I have a right to be heard, to contribute, to offer more of myself, and to do it in this way that leads to mutually beneficial relationships with other people. So like it's fundamental. I'm not just, that's why so often people use an icon of a megaphone for working out loud. And in the second edition of the book, I had to put a little thing. That's shouting. Like that's not it's one way. And
that's loud. Yeah.
People really love the loud part. But we have plenty of loud. What we don't necessarily have is attention, listening, empathy, all the things you know. And so I long story short, I took that phrase, I imbued it with elements that are more human, that are more pro-social, and tried to turn that into something else.
So one of the things you mentioned in your introduction was another trigger word. I said there's enough content there for several days, but peer-to-peer. So we've been on and this isn't an organizational design question. It is it's more of a agency question for individuals at work. Peer-to-peer. So we know a guy called Michel Bauwens, who's the founder of the Peer-to-Peer Foundation, and he's got a wiki that, again, like yourself, he's if you're working out loud, he's Mr. Peer-to-Peer. He's kind of looking at network society.
How do you spell his last name?
Bauwens, Bauwens, I believe. He's probably going to kill me when I get his name wrong because he's a good friend. But but the peer-to-peer foundation, he's done some remarkable work about kind of looking at, again, the sort of techno-social construct that things might connect in networks rather than.
You spelled his name right, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Michelle, in case he watches this. So we've kind of looked at turning the organisation on its side in many ways. So hierarchies become, as John Husband would call hierarchies. So and John has been a partner in Ethos he's a Canadian guy. Does your working out loud have a lot to say, anything to say, something to say on organisational design and work design from a OD kind of perspective? Do you ever run across that? What's the mix between that culture and the formal organisation?
Yes and no. So in the beginning, the answer was more yes, because somebody would take some free working out loud guides, introduce it like a virus into their company, and then try to spread it. And so the early adopters were I won't say corporate rebels, but more in that vein, like, hey, this is our chance to do something that is very different from the hierarchy, right? Take back a little control, etc. And that felt very good. It felt more like a movement back then, or a statement. What I learned, or my experience is, that never underestimate the resilience of a corporate structure. So what I, again, this is my own experience, and other people might view it differently, is that these movements were tolerated, but they never actually they never made much of a difference. That might be a little bit strong. They made a difference for the people in them, but what I saw, and I saw this multiple times over the years, is that the volunteers were very enthusiastic. They spread a thing. It could be working out loud. It could have been agile. It could have been something else. And unless you actually engage the machine, then eventually you get tired. Like you run out of runway, or there's a change and then you're not tolerated anymore, or something. And so these movements tended to be short-lived, or would just come and go. So what I do now is I embrace the machine, and very often what we have is procured by HR program managers who have run onboarding or learning and development or whatever, or a diversity community. And then that actually makes it safer for people to participate. And it makes it easier for them to carve out an hour in an otherwise overcrowded day. So it's almost counterintuitive, but by engaging the machine, I can actually reach more people and make it safer to practice. And so now, does that change the company from an OD or organizational design perspective? No, I'm going to say no. But what I do instead, so instead of having these big goals of changing the company, I have smaller goals of, but can I fuel a sense of self-determination within an individual, which is exactly what the company wants nowadays anyway. And I'm working at that level. I'm working more at the individual level and the systems level, if that makes sense.
Well, that's incredibly insightful and incredibly important, because the interplay between individual and organisation, between formal structures, governance, discharge of power, and informal working, like back to Etienne, the interplay between those two things is incredibly important. And back to the legitimacy point, if I just before Annabelle thinks of the next question, Our own story is one where we wanted sovereignty of the problem-solving set, which is why we incubated and accelerated, did our own thing. But invariably, that involved partnering with really big organisations. So we partnered with the UK government. We've got a venture that's still inside Ethos called Team Police, which is the UK's police force and 300,000 police officers, but it's about their well-being. If you're front line and you're suffering incredibly, damaging mental health, PTSD, how do you stay
Yeah.
well?
Yeah.
And so we're doing physical activity and fundraising to help a payroll be well.
Wow.
And that's a new brand that is becoming its own charity. So they won't work within Ethos, that team, anymore. Later this year, that will be independent.
Wow.
But our own journey post Young Leaders is that we've decided now to step back onto the consulting treadmill more. And there is this bit called value exchange, which again is a public good, and we want to be viral so people can give themselves permission to have that conversation with themselves and their networks about who they are, why they do what they do. But it's also about the corporate and business engagement, and the bit you've just said about an HR engaging and giving legitimacy, my words, to the practice of working out loud, is kind of similar to what we're doing now in going into corporate boardrooms or charities and talking about it. It might be a corporate, and we talk about ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And rather like emperor's clothes, when you build a trustworthy conversation with someone and kind of you go, well, okay, you've got a fantastic glossy report, but where are the gaps? And they go, diversity, inclusivity, we're just all white middle class males from East London. How on earth do we, build an inclusive workforce? Do we just need a normal distribution, women, and go, right, you're a woman, you're ethnic minority, it's like, no, you can't. You just start. Please don't try and do that. Because it's going to be damaging. How do you do it at a grassroots level so it percolates up, so it comes top down, so it goes in from the side, and it's a big culture thing. But it's a start of a conversation that might originate from an organisational need that's acknowledged and a gap that they go, right, we'd really like to do that. Annabelle, have you thought of a question yet? Because I know otherwise I'm going to do the next one.
No. If you have one, go for it.
No. Have you got one?
No. You go for it.
So, is the movement in organisations so it was virally spreading and now it's commissioned? Right. Is the demand for this stuff within organisations, has it gone mad? Is it kind of stable? Is it still niche? Are you seeing organisations go, wow, here's an epiphany moment, we really need to just use this to get the word out there more?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, I feel there's in my bubble in which I live, employee engagement is rife as a problem. So I'm interested to hear the answer to that question.
I'd say it's in the middle. And what I mean is I used to appeal or try to appeal to everybody. So whether you're a freelancer or you're somebody in a company, and that gave me the impression that, this thing can spread on its own, because it was. But having 0.001% of the internet use your thing is and it seems like a big number, bigger than I would have expected. It's actually different than trying to get somebody inside XYZ company to spread it in some systematic way, because they have different challenges. Or to be more specific, what an HR person needs to purchase and approve or validate and then double down on some learning program. What they need is very different from some enthusiastic fan who is curious and wants to try something. And so I'd say there's more demand and interest from HR people, potential customers, but there's also more work for us to do on shaping the product so that they're easier for them to introduce, communicate, and spread. Our best benchmark is Bosch, which you may have seen, and they've got so far between 8,000 and 10,000 people who've been in circles, which is a big number and bigger than everybody else. But they had to do a fair amount of things internally to make that happen. And so I probably naively thought, oh, it would be easy to make more Bosches. And it turns out that that's not the case, that they were really, really good at what they did. The people that worked there and introduced it and spread it. And it's on me to take that package and productize it so that other HR, maybe they don't get to 10,000, but so they can get to 500, or they can get to, or whatever it is. And that's working.
What do you think was different at Bosch, John, than anywhere else?
So there's a recipe. They have, some of these are obvious, but they're still not things that I can offer as a product. They train the trainer in a systematic way. So they have distributed working out loud mentors in many countries. They have a central registry system, like little software for circles to register. So it's easier for them to meet and find a time. And they have they developed the great materials to explain what the hell it is and how it relates to Bosch and why they should do it. They did a great job in profiling people and spreading internal working out stories of Bosch colleagues, which further normalizes it and makes it accessible for people. And they did an amazing job of getting early on sponsorship from the head of HR for the company, who was a board member, and then plugging it into different programs in different locations. So, normally when we sell to a company, I sell to a person who has a budget and span of control. And that's good, but it's very hard for that person to say, oh yeah, and I'm going to spread it across the company. Whereas in effect, the Bosch team sold it over here, and that made it a lot easier to sprinkle throughout different divisions and countries.
Yeah, I mean, we in the UK we know the chief exec of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, CIPD, which is essentially the HR directors, membership club. And HR, the industry in the UK, as a generalisation, which is not a great starting point, tends to be quite traditional. Do you see a lot of working out loud in the UK? And further question, so UK companies, UK organisations, where in the world is this quite big?
For sure, most of what we do is in Germany and Switzerland. And
is there a reason for that in your?
I would think so. The story I tell myself, which may be true, is that it's one of two things. Either Germans and Swiss, they're structured, they like the structured approach, and they're maybe culturally more open to these innovative learning things. Maybe that's one reason, possible. The other is, well, Bosch was the first company to use it, and then they, in effect, spread it, and it certainly was true in 2016, 17, 18, to their industry and then beyond. And those early adopters were very visible and vocal. So, ideas spread through social networks. my first corporate customer was in Germany, and then they spread it to other German-based companies, many of whom are global. We don't have marketing, we don't have salespeople, and what was originally spread by word of mouth, so that makes sense that it's spread in Germany and Switzerland. And now it would be up to me to develop sales and marketing to tackle other markets. When we have people in the UK or other countries, so there are certainly people who are in working out loud circles in other countries. Just as one of our programs, there's somebody in Pakistan who had trouble accessing the internet on our workbooks. But that's usually driven from a global customer who's trying to connect the dots across locations. And that in that example, they were based in Dusseldorf, right? So you have a German or Swiss company headquartered there, but then, or like Bosch, but then they spread it to their location, sometimes dozens of locations. And just to finish that thought, that tells me it's not a cultural thing. Like, I think the world's a big place, so it's not as if, people in Pakistan won't like this kind of thing. We have hundreds of people at Bosch in Japan in circles, and this isn't obviously consistent with that cultural stereotype of being visible and having contributing out loud. I think it has much more to do with who our product is, who's even aware of our product. Do they know what it is? Is there social proof in their circle that other people use it? And so if you're sitting here in the US, you're like, I haven't heard of it, and I don't know anyone who has. Whereas if you're in Germany, you've seen it in HR magazines, and we have an HR program. It's had about 700-800 people of HR managers who've been in circles. So that, again, social proof normalizes it. It just feeds on itself, and it's easy to sell it. A quick administrative question. Is it okay? I just got a message. I have to leave in a few minutes, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah. We number one can edit, but number two, I think we only planned 45 minutes.
Yeah, so we did. Yeah.
We're kind of getting there anyway. I was going to move to my next one, but unless Annabelle's got any
carry on.
thing that's just occurred, is so the question, John, is is in the history of the world, it's this is quite not been long since you've sort of gone from flash to bang on working out loud.
Yeah.
Where would you like to take it? So if we think in next 5-10 years, your life, where's this heading in your dreams?
I'm smiling because I've been asking myself that question. So the honest answer is I don't know. If you asked me that a year ago, I'd say, hey, I'd like to build this business and grow it. Like it would be more of a business answer, because I could see how this could scale. We have certified coaches, a handful in Germany and Switzerland, who do a fantastic job. And it can be a very scalable model, both inside the company and as a business. It turns out I don't love doing that. Or maybe I'm also, whether I don't love it or I'm not good at it, or those two things are combined,
Yeah.
And so one of the things I've been working on lately that I like is we created a method for people in operational environments, manufacturing, healthcare, and working with those audiences, doing more field work, like really people who rarely get learning and development. They're not in the HR talent development program, right? Like that, it's a different audience. That to me feels very fulfilling. So that's one path I'm exploring of, hey, I could do more hands-on work with people who need it more. That's one way that could go. Another is I'm working with a university here in the U.S. in Iowa, and they're looking. We have another method for resilience. So it's not quite what you described for the police, but it's in that direction.
Mm.
And it's really applied positive psychology in my circle for that.
Mm.
And they're looking, can we offer this to citizens of Iowa who need it? And I go, well, that's interesting and never, not something I ever imagined doing.
Mm.
But boy, that would really spark a sense of purpose. So I think I'm well behind you and what you do in the kind of programs that you do for people that need it. But I maybe my future is, it's a nice portfolio that has corporate customers and also does these meaningful work inside those customers as well as in society at large. And I'm still figuring that out. But if we can survive to fight another day, as they say, business-wise, then I'll keep doing that exploration and experimentation. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It could just be a thing.
But I think that's a lovely point to
Yeah.
be respectful of your time and bring this little mini webinar to a
impromptu webinar. Yeah. No
but
planning.
It's always the best. No planning. Yeah. But so in terms of where we take this, we'd love to offer you the opportunity to look at value exchange personally. It's all about who are you, where have you been, where do you want to go, and to the extent that it might be interesting for you, then it's there. We'll also put this down as a video, as a transcript, as a blog as well. Oh, no, what do you call it?
Podcast.
Audio, I think is the word I'm looking for. Modern technology. I'm 56 and I have no idea what I want to do when I grow up, kind of thing. But just huge thank you, massive insights. Thank you, Annabelle, for bringing you here. And until the next time, hopefully
it was really
speak to you again.
I respect what you both do. I'm very happy to have met you and learn more about it. So to be continued.
To be continued. That's a great way to finish.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Take care.